A quiet evening shattered in an instant.
When fake HOA officers slapped Sarah across the face, her Navy SEAL husband knew there was only one way to handle it. With deadly precision, he took action, and no one, not even these imposters, would walk away unscathed.
The sun was setting over the peaceful suburban neighborhood of Greenfield Ridge.
Families enjoyed their evenings, with children playing in the yards and neighbors chatting over fences.
Sarah and Mark had just moved in a few months ago, seeking a fresh start after Mark's retirement from the Navy SEALs. Little did they know the peaceful facade of their new home was about to be shattered. Sarah, a kind-hearted woman who had been a supportive wife through Mark's intense military career, was out on the front porch enjoying the calm evening.
As she sipped her iced tea, a pair of men dressed in what appeared to be official uniforms approached her. Their badges read HOA Enforcement, a title she hadn't heard of before. The men, about mid-40s, looked imposing.
One of them, a tall man with graying hair and a stern face, approached Sarah. He pointed to a small decorative item on her porch, a potted plant she had placed there for decoration, and claimed it violated the neighborhood's HOA regulations.
Sarah, taken aback, explained that she hadn't received any warnings or official notices about such rules, but the men were insistent, threatening to fine her if the item wasn't immediately removed.
Sarah, who had dealt with her fair share of bureaucracy, politely asked for a copy of the rules.
That's when things took a strange turn. The man smirked and in a chilling, condescending tone said, "You don't question us.
Just follow the rules." When Sarah stood her ground, the man's demeanor changed. He stepped closer, invading her personal space, and repeated his demand. She tried to diffuse the tension by asking if she could speak to someone else about the issue, but the man wasn't
having it. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped Sarah across the face.
The impact was sharp, a burst of pain surging through her cheek.
Stunned, Sarah took a step back, her breath caught in her throat.
She hadn't expected such violence from what appeared to be an official. Her heart raced, and tears welled up in her eyes, not just from the pain, but from the sheer disbelief of the situation.
She wasn't sure what was worse, the slap or the realization that the so-called HOA officers might not even be legitimate. At that very moment, Mark's car pulled into the driveway. He had been out running errands, and as he stepped out of the car, he noticed the two men towering over Sarah. His military instincts kicked in, and he could see the tension in the air, the fear in Sarah's eyes, and the anger on her face. As he walked toward them, Mark's protective side took over. His mind immediately processed the scene. Two men. One of them had slapped his wife, and he hadn't even recognized them as real HOA officers. Is there a problem here?
Mark's voice was calm but commanding, a tone that carried authority. The two men turned to face Mark, their expressions shifting from confident to wary. They hadn't expected anyone to intervene, especially not someone like Mark.
His presence alone was intimidating. Tall, muscular, with a presence that exuded
power and discipline. Mark asked the men to produce identification. They hesitated for a moment, clearly caught off guard. "You're going to want to leave now," Mark said, his voice now low and menacing. The man who had slapped Sarah smirked again, as if trying to reassert control.
But Mark didn't flinch.
"If you don't leave right now, you're going to regret
it." The tension in the air was palpable.
The two imposters tried to argue, but it was clear that Mark wasn't intimidated.
His Navy SEAL training kicked in. His body language, posture, and unwavering confidence made it clear that these men were in over their heads. Before either of the imposters could react, Mark took swift, calculated steps forward, disarming the situation with speed and precision.
The man who had slapped Sarah raised his hand again, but before he could land another strike, Mark grabbed his wrist, twisting it with such force that the man dropped to his knees in pain. The second man tried to step forward, but Mark was already
on him, using his training to neutralize the threat quickly.
Within seconds, the two men were incapacitated, their faces now bruised and blooded. As the two imposters lay on the ground, Mark stood over them, his anger simmering.
He hadn't wanted things to escalate to violence, but they had left him with no choice.
He turned to Sarah, who was still in shock, holding her cheek where the
slap had landed. "Are you okay?"
Mark asked, his voice softening. Sarah nodded, but her eyes were filled with a mix of emotions: relief, fear, and disbelief. The neighbors had gathered at a distance, murmuring among themselves.
Mark was known to many of them as the retired Navy SEAL, and they understood that this was no ordinary confrontation. They had witnessed an event that could only be described as the result of extreme provocation. After the dust settled, Mark called
the actual HOA. They confirmed that no such HOA enforcement officers had been dispatched to their street. The imposters, it turned out, had been using fake credentials to intimidate residents and collect bogus fines. The HOA promised to take swift action, launching an investigation into the matter.
As Mark hung up the phone, his mind raced with the
realization that these men could have targeted other unsuspecting homeowners. The police arrived shortly after Mark called them, and the imposters were taken into custody.
The investigation revealed that they had been pulling similar stunts in other neighborhoods.
They were charged with assault, impersonation, and multiple
counts of fraud. Sarah and Mark were asked to give statements, and despite the emotional toll, Sarah felt a sense of justice being served. These men had tried to control her, intimidate her, and hurt her.
But Mark, with his strength and experience,
had stopped them cold in the weeks that followed. Sarah healed physically, though the emotional scars would take longer to fade. Mark remained by her side, his protective instincts always alert. The neighborhood slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm, but Sarah and Mark were forever changed by the events. They had come to Greenfield Ridge for a fresh start, and while that
had been interrupted by violence and deceit, they now knew that no matter what, they would always have each other's backs. Sarah had learned a powerful lesson about the resilience of the human spirit, and Mark, while deeply grateful for his
training, realized that sometimes it was his love for Sarah that made him the strongest man in the room.